Principality in the sense that as a media entrepreneur, my platforms vary from conventional social media into also using digital media. Sorry, my platforms vary from social media into conventional media, and the ability to also combine those forces together. I work with the Alpha Reach as chief strategist. Of course, I founded it in 2008, and these days we provide content for clients, conferences, digital infographics content. We also help with media strategists. Ultimately, what I do is work with ideas to connect people, platforms in places. Ultimately, I think there are two major ways to look at it. There is a side that is very, very seamy and dirty and unpleasant. The side where young people, first of all, are the primary incidences in terms of our political problems. Whether you talk about sex workers, you talk about armed robbery, you talk about political thuggery, all of the bad things you can mention in our political situations are mostly dominated by young people, essentially because of our population. Across the continent, young people are the most in terms of demographic groups. Beyond that, there is a positive side, of course. Young people are now creating platforms to make the political process better. Either platforms that are helping for us to track finances, either platforms that are helping with transparency in governance and accountability. Young people are also creating platforms in also the electoral process itself, pre-election, post-election. They are also part of the election in terms of by themselves also being either ad hoc staff or volunteer staff or bona fide staff members of electoral monitoring bodies. And apart from that, we are also shaping the conversation across the continent. Young people are building platforms, digital platforms, social media platforms, media platforms that are now helping to put their voices, their interests, bring such interest to the fore. So there are two sides to it. On the side that is seamy, we need to pay attention to what we can do to make it much better. On the side that is good, we just need to find ways of evolving the different platforms and also forming synergy to do bigger things. Social media is only as useful as it is when it is pre the realities, say for election, for instance, pre and post the realities. Say for elections, for instance. Social media is very important in helping young people to curate their voices. First of all, to put their voices out there, to create their voices, to find out exactly what are the issues that bring them together, what are the sort of change they want to see, and the sort of people that exemplify that change. Social media, we must be careful not to use it to replace the necessities that must be put in place when it comes to the physical spaces. Say, for instance, there are places that social media does not reach. We need to go and knock on these doors. We need to still pay attention to the town criers. We need to not see social media as a competition to the things that we used to do before, but rather as a complementary end to those things, so that the bringing together of social media and those other things like knocking on doors, mouth to mouth, will help to bring that change. But social media is essential because take, for instance, what's happening in Togo. Take, for instance, the Feast Must Fall campaign in South Africa, Angola 15, the Bring Back Our Internet in Cameroon, the campaigns in North Africa, and all the other campaigns around. Social media helps to bring people's voices beyond their individual countries, and I think this is essential. And that's what it also does in the post-election reality, where you can deduce whether an election has been free or fair just by having an unbiased look at the different conversations about the election. The Kenyan election, I personally felt it was problematic before the Supreme Court even declared that before the Supreme Court decided to annul it, just by looking at different conversations across the Kenyan social media space. So social media is essential when it comes to the conversations, but we cannot afford to use social media to replace the physical responsibilities that we must do, e.g. registering to vote, e.g. voting, e.g. training people beyond social media, especially those that are not on social media. So it's a complementary reality rather than a whole reality by itself. We need to have a culturing system that brings young people together, that helps them to voice their opinions and angst and interest. That culturing process, like a DigiTrends conversation, is very, very useful because when you bring people together, they achieve more than you anticipated. The reason is because after they have the sort of conversations they want to ask, they want to have, they are also able to talk outside of those spaces and create things that make change happen. So whatever we do, we need to find avenues of bringing people together, not just the elites and the privileged young people, but young people across the board. We need to have village meetings, we need to have town halls, we need to continue to have these conversations. A lot of people knock conferences and conversations and workshops, but it's because they don't see what happens beyond these spaces. People meet to have these conversations. Then after these conversations, people become friends, people become business partners, people become allies, they form synergies that have gone on to create even bigger things away from the conversations they had and made for. I think DigiTrends has to be one of the most important things the AU has ever embarked upon. The reason is because I'm yet to see anything that has brought young Africans, and when I say young Africans, I mean Africans from north to south, from east to west, central, the diaspora together more than DigiTrends. The DigiTrends conversations, for instance, on social media has reached about 700, 800 million impressions since it started. We've reached over 50 million people combined since it started. In fact, the Abuja and Arusha conversations alone in 2017 reached 21 million people, 21 distinct accounts, stakeholders that are non-Africans, Africans in the CIS region, so-called diaspora, Africans across the board. So for me, it's one of the most important things that the AU has created. And it has also shown that young people are not just about anger, they are also about creating things. Young people are not just about knowing what they don't want, they are also about knowing exactly what they want. And they are also about articulating these things. And they are also about wanting to participate in the process, not just knock those that are running the process and not running it well. So DigiTrends is Africa's biggest argument, young people's biggest argument against those that say young people don't know what they want, they don't know what they are doing, they don't have competence. Because when you look at DigiTrends as a pyramid, young people are at the foot of its creation, young people are at the top of the conversations. In between the top and the bottom, young people form the entire circle of how this conversation happens and why it is such a productive conversation. And it is at the fore of bringing Africans together across the board, across regions, across languages and nationalities. And I'd emphasize again that it's one of the most important things that the African Union has ever embarked upon.